My name is Balaji Baktha. I'm the founder, CEO of Ventana Micro. Our goal at Ventana is to address some of the performance scaling issues that are facing the data center architectures going forward, and the ability to do things that allow customers to differentiate and innovate. So my own background, I've been in the Valley for about 30 years. I've done 4 startups, 4 successful exits, 4 public companies. But the most recent one is probably the most relevant one. It's a company called Veloce. We had the distinction of bringing the first ever ARM architecture to data center by founding a company called Veloce Technologies. My co-founder there was Greg Faber. Greg has been in the industry for about 35 years. He has a distinguished career. He was responsible for bringing K6 to server space at AMD. And with me joining forces, we were responsible for bringing the first ever ARM architecture to the data center. When we did both, the goal was to try and address the hardware innovation gap that existed on the CPUs. After you got started with the software innovation, open source revolution, et cetera, the amount of new ideas to accelerate workloads in the data center were exploding. But the CPU architectures were not keeping up with that. We thought with creating an alternative to x86, we would be able to solve it, but it became more of the same. But with RISC-V, we have the ability to change it. The opportunity here is to be able to come up with an architecture that allows you to scale performance much more efficiently, and at the same token, allow hyperscalers to innovate and differentiate. That's why we started Ventana. So if you look at the team's background, Ventana was founded in 2018 Q4, almost 2019. The team has done several ISAs successfully. We've been able to bring several high-performance server class products to market and commercialize them over the past 3 decades. So that's kind of the pedigree of the team. And we thought there is an opportunity for us to make an impact by bringing RISC-V to the data center. And that's what Ventana is all about. The average experience is 20 plus years, as I said. If you look at the server space or data center class CPU space, I would say Ventana is absolutely the leader in the world outside of some of the more established public companies. As a standalone startup, we are the leader in the space. We were recognized as one of the top 10 companies by CRN last year. So on that legacy of being able to build world-class server products, our goal was to bring all of that experience to RISC-V, which is, for the first time, opening up the entire closed box of a CPU. If you look at any of the compute subsystems in the world, you'll see everything is going to be either open or standards-based. The only thing that's going to remain largely proprietary with a hard boundary around it is a CPU. But CPU happens to be the point of innovation. So there comes the conundrum. How do you open that up? How do you make it more scalable and do it efficiently where customers can differentiate and innovate, which means you have to have CPU that is not only standards-based, but it's got to be open. It should allow hyperscalers and other OEMs to be able to add their own unique differentiating instructions to the core ISA and have that then drive overall efficiency. So that's kind of the key premise behind Ventana. That brings us to the announcement we're going to make tomorrow. It's kind of a preview. We've had some briefings with some of the folks, but if you look at it, Ventana is introducing world's first data center class, highest performance RISC-V processor, Veyron V1. You've never seen anything of this performance level ever done in RISC-V. It's a 5-nanometer part, running at 3.6 gigahertz, capable of driving single-socket performance that's second to none, none being anything in the world, including any of the existing ICEs. So that's what Ventana brings to the party. The ability to bring RISC-V to data centers at performance targets that are comparable to x86 as well as ARM cohorts is what Ventana has been able to accomplish since the company was founded in 2019. We were largely, since inception, the company has been in stealth. And as we remained in stealth, we wanted to make sure the open CPU architecture was coupled with a unique piece of innovation that allows customers to rapidly productize, which is the chiplet-based implementation. Why chiplets? If you look at Bob Brennan from Intel Foundry Services, he made a speech at DAC. He was alluding to the fact that you can't rely on transistors alone to drive performance and efficiency. That curve is flat. We need to come up with an alternative way to scale. And he was referring to a statement that Gordon Moore himself made in, I believe it's 1960s or 70s, where he said, at some point in time, transistors are going to run out of juice. You got to look at chiplets, or what he called as system of modules, to scale effectively and innovate. That's what chiplet is all about. So our goal was to take the chiplet-based implementation and bring it to the market at levels that the industry has never seen before. What do we mean by that? If you do chiplets, you got to make it so that the overall performance remains somewhat comparable to doing a single chip, a monolithic die-based implementation. As in chiplets, but performance should not be compromised too much. The way you achieve that is by having ultra-low latency chiplet architecture. Ultra-low latency chiplet architecture is the only way you can achieve this. So what Veyron features for the first time in the world are two things. One, world-class, enterprise-capable CPU core put together in a high-performance fabric interconnect with world-class RAS and other data center-capable features, or features that data centers really require, and do that with a beefy cache hierarchy and put together multiple CPUs in a fabric that's world-class. What do we mean by that? When you put a bunch of CPUs in a cluster, when you scale, if the CPU fabric is not designed efficiently, you can get good performance on one CPU, but as you go beyond number of cores, scaling becomes a huge problem. That is a problem that we've been able to tackle head-on from day one. And then, once you got that all figured out, going to chiplets, if we can achieve die-to-die interconnect performance that's comparable to a monolithic die, then you bring best of both worlds. The only way you do that is by having a parallel interconnect. So our ability to do parallel die-to-die interconnect at ultra-low latencies defines both open cores and open architecture that allows you to leverage the chiplets that are capable of delivering very high performance. Just to give you a number, if you look at serialized chiplets, they take about anywhere between 110 plus nanoseconds die-to-die interconnect. With what we are doing here, it's 7 nanoseconds, 7. So to move away from serialized interconnect to more of a parallel architecture gives you not only modular design capability, but the opportunity to do something that's almost delivering the same performance that customers come to expect from a monolithic design. So we're combining those two things in this architecture. And when you do that, make sure the standard itself is open. So from the beginning, we worked with some of the large hyperscalers, large semiconductor ecosystem partners to come up with that architecture that's going to be parallel and low latency and open, where everybody can participate. So we put this together using OCP ODSA standard called BOW, bunch of wires. You may have seen other chiplet standards emerge, like UCIe. We work very closely with the key folks behind UCIe to make sure that we are also able to support UCIe as soon as that becomes available. So what it is today is BOW. So we have taped out this chip in 5 nanometer. The beauty of BOW is you can productize it without requiring fancy, expensive packaging as well. So the ability to productize cost effectively is a key feature that this particular chiplet architecture provides. So if you were to summarize in one sentence, what does Ventana bring to the party? We are taking RISC-V to data center using all of the high-end features that the data centers care about, fully baked into the core, but then deliver this at a product level using chiplet-based implementation. Those are the key innovations that we bring to bear. And when you do this, if you can build the CPU cores really efficiently, there are ways to achieving efficiency. You can brute force performance by pushing every last ounce of performance in a given CPU pipeline. When you do that, your performance per watt suffers immensely. But if you can find an optimal design point and drive that performance at that optimal design point, what you get is very high single socket performance. So the ability to do server class CPU in chiplets and do it at an optimal design point allows you to achieve highest single socket performance. The proof is in the pudding. You can take a look at the performance chart that we show here. You have, for the first time, RISC-V going to data center at unit economics that hyperscalers appreciate and care about and validate and welcome. And apart from hyperscalers, you have other high-performance customers. We'll show you some of the target markets, but that's there. So the product is taped out, and we have the entire SDK in place. One of the first things we did while we were in stealth is to work with one of the largest hyperscalers and one of the very large OEMs in the Valley, prominent ones. And these guys buy billions of dollars worth of CPUs every year. So we worked with them to map out the software dependencies proactively. We just wanted to make sure that the CPU chiplet is all great, but make sure software is not going to be an impediment. It's not going to be a roadblock. We ensured that that was not going to be the case by doing the ecosystem work from day zero. Our goal was to make sure that the ecosystem was going to be ripe to productize all these things before we taped out our chip. I'm delighted to share with you all that we achieved that a quarter ago. So all the key applications that we're going to talk about are achieved with the software ecosystem fully baked, approved, and our goal was to have a hyperscaler sign off on it, and we met that target. So not only do you have a world-class core given in the form of a chiplet, performance that's second to none, allows customers to innovate, but you also have the entire software stack ready to go. Next slide. So what are the markets? So far, if you look at RISC-V, RISC-V has been very successful in penetrating several applications. My colleagues here will tell you that more than 10 billion cores have already shipped with RISC-V in various use cases. But high performance has been somewhat elusive up until Ventana came on the scene. Ventana was in stealth. We came out end of last year at the show. We came out of stealth, and we announced that the team that's responsible for bringing K6 to market at AMD, first our ARM CPU to the data center, is working on bringing RISC-V to the data center. And now we taped out the chip. We announced Veyron V1. Veyron V1 was a 5 nanometer part. We're not going to just sit on our laurels and just milk it. We are continuing to work on the next generation, which is going to be in the next advanced process geometry, and pushes the overall single socket performance even further beyond where it is today. And that's why these end customers really love what we do. We've been able to engage with some of the well-established players from data center space. And automotive happens to be somewhat very similar to data center in terms of what they care about in a CPU. They really want to have all of the enterprise class features that people care about, like the RISC features, advanced interrupt controller, and putting together a base architecture that allows you to preempt any of the side channel attack related problems. So security built into the core ISA grounds up. Those are the capabilities that really, really gets their attention. And we've been engaging with some of the top names in the space. And with all of that, we've got tremendous validation from them. And so automotive becomes a natural. So if you look at automotives, they're kind of becoming servers on wheels. So when you do a server that goes into a data center with ASIL-B, ASIL-D, some of the automotive-specific value adds, it becomes also an opportunity. The next is 5G, Edge, and AI. 5G infrastructure has become a huge opportunity for open compute or processors that allow customers to bring in some of the DSP functions plus regular stacks to be coexisting, which is where the ability to have high-performance CPUs with acceleration built side by side becomes a natural part of the discussion. So that's an opportunity that we are very excited about, and a lot of good engagements in that space. And then you see cloud-native stack moving to the edge compute. AI becomes a pretty compelling use case. So if you can put them all together, then that becomes an opportunity. Right now, they use Xeon Ds and Xeons, et cetera, or some 20 FPGAs. Cost of a typical solution would be running in the thousands, like $5,000–6,000. With our solution, with another partner chiplet, you can drive that below, easily achieve 1/10 of the cost. So that's there. And last but not the least, client. You've seen tremendous pull demand for client-based use cases most recently, because once people realize that RISC-V is ready in some of these use cases, you saw a company like Apple take notebooks and laptops seamlessly from x86-based architecture to ARM. RISC-V becomes a similar next step. For as long as the ecosystem and the software components are fully baked, there's nothing in the CPU that prevents you from being able to apply it to client use cases as well. So we already are working with some of the lead players there. So if you put it all together, today's announcement is about, for the first time in the RISC-V community, we can all be proud that we have a CPU that's performing at the same level as x86 or any of the ARM variants, while providing something that's unique to RISC-V, which is open extensibility. So base ISA is going to be pretty rigid. That's where software becomes a key common denominator, leverage point for everybody, but then still allow customers to add innovation. That's what RISC-V does. So for the first time, you have the ability to break away from this closed CPU architecture and take this into a market that allows you to really exploit the full potential of RISC-V in data center space. So that's what today's announcement is all about. Go to the last slide, maybe. Okay, don't go to the SDK. So if you look at it, we will be releasing full-fledged hardware development kit in second half of next year. Our existing customers have all been engaging with us using early engagement platforms. And we hope to be able to do broad-based engagement across all applications that we've shown using our hardware SDK that's going to be made available in the second half of next year. And lastly, if you look at it, sorry, if you can go back to the ecosystem, the software ecosystem side quickly. No, that one. Yeah, that one. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I just wanted to show you, when I said our SDK, and we made sure that the software is not going to be an impediment, Look at the use cases we've been able to demonstrate with RISC-V already. These are the kinds of things that hyperscalers and OEMs and other people care about. All these use cases, storage, networking, virtualization, security, web apps, in-memory database, these things already exist. For them to exist, you need to have a robust underlying horizontal infrastructure, which is your tools, the firmware, various versions of firmware, the operating system, SPDK, DPDK. So we've gotten all of this done. It's already uploaded to the GitHub. So we have done this work proactively. And when people talk about, oh, everything takes 10 years to evolve, with an alternative architecture like ARM, it took a while because there was no silicon for the first 3-4 years. That's server class. Here we are starting out differently. The likes of Sci-Fi have already got working silicon that you can leverage to start working on the ecosystem. That's how we got started. And then switch it over to your own silicon using emulator. So with that kind of strategy, we've been able to rapidly bridge the ecosystem gaps and make it truly a complete stack that allows customers to productize easily. So that's the software ecosystem. With that, I just want to bring to what we offer as products. Yeah. So if you look at it, we can give you a standard product, ASSP. That's chiplet plus an I/O hub. That's first. Second is, if a customer wants to customize the I/O hub with their own accelerator, they can do that. That's number 2. With those variations, customers can truly scale. So in other words, if you want to right-size a particular silicon based on your workload needs, where you need more memory, more I/O, but modest compute, just use one chiplet. But if you need more compute, add a couple of more chiplets. So you can right-size the ratio between compute, memory, and I/O appropriately. That's a huge advantage nobody had. That's what hyperscalers really love, because today, if they have to go predict where the workloads are going to be 3 years from now, they can't. So what they do, they supersize it. When they supersize it, this ends up being a problem. With us, you don't. You can just right-size your I/O hub based on your exact amount of memory you need and I/Os, while also adding any workload-specific acceleration you may have gotten working on an FPGA, bring that to the I/O hub. So that's what this architecture allows you to do. So put it all together, customers get world-class RISC-V that they can customize at many levels, fine grain, coarse grain, and still achieve the overall bill of material cost. That's about 1/3 to 50% of what is commercially available from other vendors, established players. So you can achieve a lot of this. When you right-size, you first of all consume the appropriate amount of energy. You're not burning too much power that you don't need to burn. Your bill of material cost is reduced to where it needs to be. And you can add your own proprietary innovation. And you get all that. And that's why this roadmap is so compelling. And there's a lot to cover here. But if any of you would like to sit down with us and learn more about how we achieve it, my team is here. We have Travis, our VP of Marketing. We have Omar, our SVP Business Development here. And we have a VP of Engineering here as well, Narayan. And so we're going to be here for you to chat with us if you prefer. So that brings us to pretty much the last slide. I'll just leave you with these thoughts. High-performance leadership with Veyron V1 that's been our founding mission. And I'm really delighted to share with you that's here. And our lead customers are excited about it. We sustain that with the next generation product called Veyron V2 that gives you a compelling roadmap. And beyond that, RISC-V coming to high-performance markets means you got to do chiplet-based productization, show how to productize it using all the other missing pieces, like the packaging portion has got to be dealt with, supply chain issues got to be proactively dealt with. So we've been able to manage to address those through partnership proactively. And that's why this roadmap becomes viable and successful. And so, that's the announcement. And please come see us. We are a Diamond sponsor. We're going to be on the show floor, and would love to see you there and answer any questions you might have and get any feedback you might have for us. So Ventana, bringing RISC-V to the data center. That's what we're all about. Thanks for your time.